Good evening and welcome to the Spinal Cord Injury Forum. My name is Jeannie Hoffman. I'm one of the psychologists here at the University of Washington and the co-director of the Northwest Regional Spinal Cord Injury Model System. The forums, the video recordings, and all of our online media content are made possible by a grant from the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research. Tonight we are very pleased to have three panelists who will be talking about traveling with spinal cord injury. We have Joe Meyer, Chris Curtis, and we have a wonderful opportunity to have Karen Van Cleef here, a travel agent with tetraplegia who actually is from Portland, who graciously offered to come up and be part of our forum tonight, and so we're thrilled to have her here. And she specializes in disability travel. So each panelist, how we're going to do this tonight is I'm going to have Karen just start and talk a little bit about the whole beginning of travel experience. So as if that we're all her client coming in to see her, to just give a background on kind of the things that she thinks about and considers in terms of travel. And then we're going to talk to our panelists, all three of them, about other issues about travel.
Good evening. If I could start with just telling you a little bit of my background. 19 years ago, on April 6th will be, the anniversary of my accident, and so that will be 19 years. I was in Michigan at the time of my accident, and I decided to skip school for the day. And I was with two friends, Mike and Jenny, and we were in a third-party vehicle. And Jenny was just an inexperienced driver, and she lost control of the truck that we were in because she was going around a pothole, and instead of the side of the truck going into a ditch, it went up a small knoll, and we hit a tree and the truck rolled several times, and my head and my shoulders went through the side window, and I broke my neck, which left me a C5 quad. But as the time went on and I had rehab, I was then re-diagnosed as being a C5-6 incomplete quad. And I did spend about 4.5 months at the University of Michigan because I did have a halo, and that kept me there just because of how long the halo had to stay on for the fusion in my neck to take place. So yeah, I did have a fusion for my fifth vertebrae because it was shattered during the accident. So to fast forward, 2 years ago, actually will be 3 years in September, I started It's All About You Travel outside of Portland, Oregon. It's actually in Beaverton, and I had people come up to me and ask me different questions about travel just because they saw me in a chair, and it would either be somebody that was in a chair or somebody that knew somebody that was in a chair and wanted to find out how I traveled and how I went about it. And I had such a desire to not only share my story but to help others that I thought, why not start something that I've been doing since my accident myself? And so therefore I started All About You Travel. So basically what I do when I get a telephone call for somebody that's interested in traveling, these are some of the basic questions I would ask is, where are you interested in traveling? Have you been there before? What did you like about that destination? What concerns did you have about that destination? And if you didn't face any obstacles, that's great, but if you did, what are they, and how did you overcome them, or did you have to forego certain opportunities that you really wanted to do but didn't have the opportunity to do so? Because that way I can then research what could be the next step possible for somebody else that is going to go on that trip, or if that client wants to return, therefore I can have new information for them so they can then go. I also ask about the accommodations that they're interested, whether it's a hotel, motel, condominium, rental home, and just different kind of lodging information. Main questions I ask about that is if the client's interested in a roll-in shower, a bathtub, obviously whether or not it has a handheld shower, and I get really more specific with it is I don't know how many people realize or maybe not realize that when you go into a hotel room, for example, there's always chairs for people to sit down. Well, we already come with one, so therefore we don't necessarily need one. But our partners and our loved ones, we obviously want them to be comfortable as well. So, so there's no problem whatsoever to call the front desk and have extra, furniture removed from the room. And a lot of people are hesitant to ask those kind of questions. I always encourage being your own self-advocate, and part of that is always thinking outside the box. You're going to want to plan ahead, and you are just really going to want to focus on your main needs. So back to the accommodations. Also, if the hotel or wherever you're staying, if they provide a shower bench or chair, what size bed do you prefer? And like I said, the removal of extra furniture, or if you need extra furniture for some other reason. I also inquire about the type of wheelchair that a client will be taking on their vacation. Depending if you're using a power chair and you're thinking about going overseas, I'm just going to use Italy for example, that's going to be much more harder to get around in a power chair. Yes, that might take away your independence, but it will also allow you a lot more possibility to get to areas where you might not be able to, because if you guys realize there are so many people that are willing and wanting to help us, as long as we aren't proud and not willing to, welcome and humble ourselves to accepting that help, because people want us to enjoy ourselves just as much as the other population. I mean, whether we were born with an injury or had an injury after walking, it's the same gist. So I also inquire about measurements. I have a client that, well, and that's one thing that I do ask is, do you have special measurements, do you have special measurements that work best for you? You might find it difficult to transfer yourself from your chair to a bed that is 26 inches high, or lowering yourself to, say, a commode that is a lot lower than yours that is at home. And so one thing that I have found is I have a client that, well, I have several clients, but one in particular that that I have their measurements that work best for me. So when I also, in regards to we'll just stick with hotel because it can be condominium or whatever, but with a hotel, the main people that you want to talk to and are your best advocates of getting your room the way you want it is speaking to the head of housekeeping. They're going to know their rooms inside and out because they're in it every single day. And then the other person that you'll want to speak with is somebody in the engineering department, because they could become your very best friend. And in regards to that, the measurements I'm going to just throw out to you is there's a bed height that works for a client of mine, which is 18 to 19 inches high. However, ADA rules are 19 inches to 21 inches. The commode for this individual would be 17 to 19 inches. And then another thing that I also ask is for all of these measurements before you go on your trip. I'll have you measure the length of your chair from, with you being in your chair, so obviously somebody would need to assist you, is from literally the tip of your toes to the back of your wheelchair. So we would want the length, we'd want the width at the widest part of your chair, and we'd want the height from the floor to your knee for knee clearance, so you know whether or not you can fit under the apron of any kind of desk or sink or anything like that. And also from the floor to the top of your head for transportation issues, especially if you're really tall. And then also for safe transferring, you also will want to find out the width of the wall to your bed, because if you are transferring yourself, that's one thing, but if you have somebody that's going to be assisting you in doing a pivot transfer or a two-man lift, or if you're using a Hoyer lift that you need to bring in and transfer, you're going to have the use of, the need of much more space. And so ideally what I have found with my clients is about 36 inches from the wall to the bed seems to be what works best. And also a lot of people say that a king-size bed is ideal just because it allows more space in the room for other areas. And so I ran into a situation with a client of mine who wanted to stay at this hotel, and with the measurements that I gave you, it was actually the Gansevoort Hotel in New York. It's a hotel that we all want to stay at. It's fabulous. It's very upscale, and everything is to the nines. It's very posh and very popular, and so it's not the hotel I'm staying at where I've got a flat sheet and a comforter. It has, instead of a flat sheet, it has down bedding and then another down comforter and everything. And I want to say the height of that bed was probably 26 inches. And my client is saying, no, that's not going to work for me, and I know this. And however, this bed is up on a platform, a built-in platform. You can always ask if the Hollywood frame can be removed. That's when the engineer comes in. And if that platform or Hollywood frame can't be removed, then you get really creative. And so what I asked the head of housekeeping to do was to strip all the luxury items, unfortunately. And I said, just put a flat sheet on the bed and let's see what we can do. And they got it down to 22 inches. And so that was a big score, I thought. My client was very thrilled. So that was a plus. And another thing that you can do when you're thinking about a room and you're thinking about the space in the shower, and just to make sure that you're being heard and understood, is to ask if they will take pictures of the room and have them send it to you via email. And if you don't have email, once again, always planning ahead of time for travel arrangements is key. So they can always do it snail mail as well. But that is another idea.
I'm Chris Curtis. I have it's about 4.5 years out now. Primary injuries at C5, but after a little time I'm a C6, 7 incomplete. as far as function's concerned. Did my rehab here at the UW, actually got the whole big old 8 weeks that they give nowadays. It was good rehab, I'll have to say. And I've traveled a bit around, and Karen gave some great information on hotels, because hotels can be just amazing. I mean, sometimes the beds are like this high, and trying to transfer onto something like that is almost impossible. And talking to the engineers and whatnot to try to figure out different ways to either remove the platform or maybe find different ways of leverage to bounce up into maybe a chair or something else to get onto it has really been very helpful. Let's see, I'm trying to think of some of the more interesting things about travel have come to pass, and I've had the advantage of traveling overseas. I've traveled to Switzerland a few times, and traveled around the U.S. with my rugby team. There's a couple of guys from my rugby team here, and that's a little adventure in itself, because you never know what you're going to get. And you go in hotels that have eight teams of rugby guys, about 10 guys in chairs at the same time. We're all flying into the same airport, and there's all sorts of confusion as to how to transfer everybody onto a plane, how to get all the equipment into the hotels, how to get the equipment off the plane, whose chair belongs to whom, and all of that stuff. So there's some interesting things. One thing that Karen brought up is being a self-advocate is extremely important, and even, or maybe even especially so, if you're traveling with somebody else, that if you speak up for yourself instead of having the person that's traveling with you do the speaking, because in some situations I know that the flight attendant or the airline people will start talking to whoever's kind enough to help you, and as helpful as that person's going to be, you may have specific desires or interests that you need to express yourself. So speak up for yourself, and just always keep a great attitude about things. Nobody wants to make it difficult for you. They're always trying to make it as easy for you as possible. Airline folks are so nice and so kind and deal with so many people that the fact that they're not like always trying to just beat up on everybody every day is amazing. So really, just if you smile and you're nice to them, they will bend over backwards to make sure that you're comfortable and get a good seat. Give yourself lots of time, especially when it comes to what would you call the people that assist in the transfers at airports?
Transporters?
The transporters. Give yourself lots of time with the transporters. Often, whatever country you're in, it is not their native language. Doesn't matter what country you travel to. I've found that in Switzerland, they're from all over the world, and they generally don't deal with people that have severe disabilities. They generally help the elderly, maybe, that can move around more easily, and so you have to walk them through lifts and transfers, and often have to repeat it in many different ways, and maybe show them, if you don't speak the same language as they do, show them what needs to be done, and maintain their attention, because I noticed at London Heathrow, for instance, they wander off really very easily. So just trying to keep their attention, and here in Seattle on the international side, they have a tendency to just be on their cell phone all the time. So it's good to just keep talking and constantly be engaged with the individual.
My name is Joe Meyer. I'm injured just a little bit over 6 years from a motorcycle racing accident. So I was having fun, at least, when I had my injury, up until it wasn't fun anymore. I'm C4, but I've got a little bit of C6 and C5 function, incomplete, luckily, so I have a lot more function than a pure C4. I live with my wife and my 2 young daughters, and in these 6 years I've been injured, I've probably flown 5 or 6 times around the country anyway, and had reasonably good luck. And I'm generally pretty happy with the airlines. I've flown on Alaska and Frontier and I think Continental and Delta. Alaska's good, but you never know. Some days are good, some days are bad. Frontier was good. I'm from Kansas originally. We flew on Frontier back to Kansas. Delta lost my wheelchair. It just wasn't there when I got to San Diego. And I think it was Continental decided to load my chair onto the airplane on its side so that the armrest was all bent up. But they replaced that a few months later. But it got done. But all in all, I think what everybody else has already said, the airline people are always very helpful. And for the most part, I mean, even in general, I don't think I've ever had anybody turn me down when I asked them for help in general about anything. So people, I think, are pretty willing to help out all along the way. For me, since I travel with my wife, she doesn't get much of a vacation, unfortunately, because she becomes my caregiver. But it's actually probably easier for me because I don't have to worry so much about transferring myself or having a proper shower chair or whatever it may be, because my wife can make up the difference just by being there to help out. I think in general, ask people who've traveled. In general, that's good advice about everything, is ask people who've done it. I know one of the people I met when I was injured, told me a few basic things about how he traveled, and suddenly you realize you can. And like I said, I've done it 5 or 6 times now. At least once or twice a year, we fly somewhere. I mean, what I need and what it takes for me to travel is unique compared to Chris. And I know there are certain shortcuts we can take, and there's a few things we've come up with to be inventive. For instance, luckily, one positive outcome of my injury is I don't sweat and I don't stink, so I don't need a bath that often. So I literally would go for like a week without a shower, and it's not a problem, okay? So who cares about having a shower chair if you're not going to take a shower? It works, and trust me, my wife would tell me otherwise if that were the case. But things like that, just to be a little bit crude, waste paper baskets work. A garbage bag, a grocery bag, and a waste paper basket, you got a toilet, okay? So you can make things work. And I like what she said about taking furniture out of the room or having furniture brought in. That's probably my biggest concern is, can I just get my chair into and maneuver in the room? Since I do travel with my kids and my wife, we have 2 beds in the room, and it's hard for me to shoehorn in to a 2-bedded room. It'd be nice if we could just get a king, but that's not always the case. But I guess, yeah, think about what you do, what you need personally, how can you adapt. And then, yes, we don't, for instance, I don't worry that much about getting a handicap accessible room. I just want a room I can roll into and get to the bed. That's it. And if I can get into the bathroom. If I can just get in, that's pretty much all I need from a room. But again, that's me.
Actually, the interesting thing about rooms that I find is I don't generally check ahead too much on the hotel if it's a place I've never been to before. But I will ask to see the room before I check in if they can let me do that, just to see if the bathroom does work. I was just down in Portland, for instance, at this one hotel, and I couldn't get my chair in the door past the toilet to turn left or right to get either towards the tub or towards the sink. And I asked them if they would take the door off, which is often an option that you can do. And generally they'll take the door off. This particular place they didn't want to, but we figured out a way to get it off anyway. But there still wasn't enough room, so I switched hotels. Accessible rooms are sometimes less accessible than the non-accessible rooms, especially if you're traveling with like a commode seat, you know, that's something that you put, a padded seat that you put on top of the toilet. The accessible rooms will often have a high seat, so if you add one of these padded seats on top, it's, you know, 10 stories tall. A standard toilet seat, you know, with this padded seat on top, you got lots of space. So really, just if you have a chance, going to a hotel and you haven't called ahead to find out or get pictures, just take a look, and if the room's not going to work for you, ask to look at a different room. Same thing with the bedding. I stayed at this one place where they had their nice room that had a fireplace and was going to be so nice and relaxing and all that, had a Tempur-Pedic mattress. And a Tempur-Pedic mattress doesn't work for me. It feels like I'm laying on concrete because it adds pressure to every part of my body, and nice, even, hard pressure to every part of me, so it feels like concrete. Plus, when I try to move on it, I just sink in. So I, you know, had to move to a different room. So definitely, you know, check out whatever you can when you can. Ask for, if you need to, ask for a transfer bench. You can also make phone calls to the ALS Society or the MS Donor Closet or any of those places in the city that you're going to, and see if they can loan you a transfer bench or some equipment that you can use, and you can just pick it up while you're down there. You know, one day without a shower bench for me is about as long as I want to go without a shower. I mean, I'll sponge bath myself, but you know, really, I'll try to bathe at least a couple times a week. But yeah, those are the big ones. Well, I don't really sweat either, but I don't wake up unless I get wet.
Is a Holiday Inn, if that room works for you in Seattle, is there a chance that it would work for you anywhere else, or is it you have to check out every single one? Chris, I don't know if you can answer that, or maybe.
Well, personally, I've found that the same chain is usually it's usually managed independently. They own their own properties, or they manage their own properties, and so each of the rooms are going to be different, even if it's a big chain. And some of the chains are more uniform, like I can't remember, the Hyatt Express or whatever the new Hyatt things are. They all look the same, and they're all the same, but Holiday Inns are all different. Ramadas are all different. Quality Inns all seem to be different.
So nothing.
Nothing.
So, Joey, you talked about having your wife travel kind of as your caregiver. Are there things that you guys would recommend in terms of, you know, kind of things to be aware of with your caregiver? Obviously, you guys probably know how to communicate.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel bad when we travel because my wife, she works hard because she's taking care of me and she's taking care of the kids. So she doesn't get a lot of vacation. We haven't done it yet, but I've definitely considered hiring or taking my current caregiver along with us. You know, you'd have to work it out, pay their way or pay them, you know, how you'd want to work it out financially, but to take a caregiver with you wouldn't be a half bad idea if your primary caregiver is going to be your wife or your significant other otherwise. My sister lives in Illinois. She happens to be a rehab psychologist working at a hospital there, and I'm thinking about visiting her this summer, and she's talked to a few people there who would be more than happy to, you know, come in and help out and give my wife a break while I'm there visiting her. So, yeah, think about things like that too, getting caregivers on the road also. I was going to mention about the lift. I'm a huge advocate of just learning to do manual pivot transfers. I train all my caregivers how to do it. I can't imagine trying to deal with a Hoyer lift on the road. And for me, one of my current caregivers is all of 5'2" and 105 pounds, and I'm 210 pounds, and she transfers me, you know, all the time. 3 times a night, actually, when we do a full shower night. So think about definitely learning to do manual transfers, and yeah, think about taking a caregiver with you if it's a big trip you really want to do and you want to give your wife a break.
How about you? Do you travel with caregivers?
Rarely. I generally lately have been traveling to where I have family. Now they don't really help me and I stay in hotels, but the concept
no?
of, so no, but they'll help me, like, you know, get a shower bench out and set it up.
Okay.
As will the hotel staff, and actually I find that the hotel staff is a lot easier to communicate with. I suggest nobody ever travels to visit family, but that's
That's a whole other story.
that's a whole other story. No, but I have traveled with a friend before who's helped me out, and it's really exhausting for them because they feel like they need to help you all the time, and that is I feel bad for them not being able to enjoy as much of it, and so I recommend, if you can, to find somebody down in whatever location you're going. If you can, you can call some of the agencies. They can often send somebody over, or if you know somebody who lives in that city, they might know somebody that's a college student or a nursing student, or somebody who could use just a little extra cash to help you out for a few hours. So,
Karen, do you have any other suggestions in terms of caregivers on the road?
Well, for me, I do need to travel with a caregiver. And as Joe was mentioning how he travels with his wife, I would definitely 100% say that you and your wife and your kids need to go with a caregiver, because 100% you and your wife and your kids are going to have a different experience like no other trip you've ever had, because it's just going to be much more relaxing. I just remember when it was just me and my mom was always my caregiver, and she was doing everything, but she wasn't enjoying the opportunities of really what we were doing, whether it was with family or whatnot, because she was so exhausted. But like for myself, it's something that I personally can't travel on my own, and you are limited with the different kind of help that you get when you need certain services as well.
So do you always hire somebody that you know, or do you depend on kind of where you're traveling and when?
I am not as courageous as Chris, so I go with someone that I know, because I don't know what I'm going to get at the other end, and I do care.
One other question I was going to ask you, we were talking about lifts, and Joe's got, you know, the opportunity to train people to transfer him. Do you ever arrange for lifts, or do people have to do that? That's not exactly an easy travel item.
It isn't. That's why whenever I direct somebody, I would get information for them in regards to contacting a durable medical equipment company in the city that they would be visiting, and I could do all that information for them and get what they need and have it delivered to the hotel.
So, Joe, you mentioned at the beginning that you had an opportunity to actually have an airline lose your chair. How did you deal with that?
Well, after my wife calmed down, we got into San Diego late at night, and I'll tell the story real quick because it was, I guess, amusing now. We were flying on a direct flight from here to San Diego, but it flew through Salt Lake first. And I'm guessing that my chair went on last, so it came off first when we landed in Salt Lake, and then they just didn't put it back on the plane. Now, you would think the smart thing to do would be to leave it there in Salt Lake, but no, they put it on a plane to Portland. So my chair went to Portland, and I went to San Diego. Luckily, they scrambled. They had a medical equipment company, you know, online for situations like that. That was Delta at the time. And by the time they put me in a regular manual chair, loaded me up in the van, we had a transport to the hotel. By the time we got to the hotel, they had your basic scooter. Oh no, it was a chair, but it was more of a rehab chair, not a full-blown paralyzed spinal cord injury chair. Luckily, I got enough function that I could make it work, and I had to put up with that till like 1 o'clock the next afternoon when my chair showed up and they brought it out to the hotel, and we were good to go.
What did they offer you for the inconvenience?
We got each, so there's 4 of us traveling, we each got $200 vouchers. So we got $800 travel vouchers out of the deal. So they were very good about it. And everything, you know, it wasn't great, but it all worked out about as well as it could. And probably just that particular trip, the hotel room we were in was small, nice hotel, but older, you know, 2-3 inch lip that I had to slam into just to get up and over into the room. I could pretty much roll through the room to the other end and turn around and roll back out, so not a lot of room. But yeah, that was the situation with me losing my chair.
Chris, do you have any good stories?
You know, luckily I haven't had any situations with them losing my chair, which sounds absolutely awful. I've had situations where they've broken my chair before. It was actually this one, and they didn't fold the back down. And so there's a bushing right here where it pivots that just snapped when it was put in the cargo hold. So you'd sit back into it, and like one side would flop backwards. And that one, there was nothing that they could do, so they just set me up with a durable medical equipment place, and I just put a bunch of duct tape around it for my trip. And then when I got back home, I went to a durable medical place and had it fixed. And they were very good about it. You know, they were able to fix it, you know, that day, and it was all paid for by Alaska and that sort of thing. But I did have a really fun adventure in Alabama when we went to nationals over there. They're transferring me off the plane from the transfer seat onto their just regular chair to, actually no, it was this chair, to just roll me up the jetway. And they're so used to the chairs that they have at the airport that have really big wheels in the front so they can go over those lips on the jetway. Well, these have tiny little wheels. And so when you ram these tiny little wheels into a jetway that's got about an inch lip, all it does is stop the chair. And so this woman started pushing, just going as fast as she could, rammed me into this, and I flew right out of the chair onto the jetway, which of course ensues with a lot of panic of everybody around you, which is probably the most entertainment you'll ever get in a day, is people running around you panicking because you're out of your chair, and they all want to get you into the chair as fast as possible. And that's where you have, no matter what, and that's where you have to like get everybody to stop and start listening to it. It's like, no, this is not a problem. I fall out of my chair all the time. Just get under my knees, get under my arms, just pick me up, don't hurt your back, and just put me back in the chair, and everything's fine. But it's that sort of thing, is if you see that there's going to be an obstacle, slow people down around you. It's, once again, maintain that line of communication with anybody who's helping you, because I try now to just make sure, okay, little wheelie here, you know, every time I'm going to see one of those things, so they make sure that I don't get thrown out of the chair. Not that I mind being thrown out of the chair, it just slows it all down.
So, luggage. What all do you pack with you, other than kind of the usual stuff?
Well, I end up packing a lot of stuff because I just require a lot of stuff. Let me think, what kind of special things. Boy, you know, we have a list, and it's pretty long, a big grocery list of kind of, you know, the classic, if you take it, you won't need it kind of approach. So we take more than we probably need, and usually we don't need it. But for sure, you know, if it's unusual and you're not going to be able to get it on the other end quickly, you probably want to take it with you. But yeah, I just have a big long list of, you know, what do I need and what do I need for contingencies. And we have a, you know, set of tools. Just, yeah, make a list as you do it, and keep it with you for the next time, I guess, for packing the next time. There was something I was going to say.
Is it true there's no charge for the medical bag?
Yes. Yeah, I think,
Do you
yeah.
want to repeat that, Joe?
For instance, I've got a portable shower chair, which is expensive but really, 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 really worth it. But yeah, you don't have to pay the luggage charge for that. Something I was going to jump off on that Chris said, I find too that the people at the airlines can be a little bit overly helpful. I mean, they want to get you in that seat and they're like, okay, what can we do? And I'm just like, okay, but they tend to be over anxious. They want to, you know, do things. So you have to you do have to sort of slow them down and say, okay, here's how this is going to work. Here's what works for me, you know. But yeah, the good news is they're very helpful.
Sometimes I pack one of those padded commode seats, and so I'll put that in my luggage. Lots of urologicals, just in case you have extras. You bring them on board, whatever you're going to need. Bring enough so that in case you're ever stuck in an airport, you have everything you need for an extra day. So your meds for an extra day, bladder management stuff for an extra day.
Don't check the stuff. If it's really important, don't check it.
Check it. Yes.
Put it in a backpack.
And
Carry on.
they're a little more lenient with us as far as how many bags we can sort of carry as carry-on. So, you know, if you have like 3 bags or something like that, they're a lot more lenient. If I'm going to have a long flight, for instance, I carry an extra cushion. I have a Rojo that I put on I have them remove the airline seat, and I put the Rojo on that, you know, on the base platform. It's a flotation device as well, so, you know, it works. And it's a lot more comfortable, plus it doesn't raise you up the 4 inches that putting on a normal cushion would on top of the airline seat, so you can sit more comfortably in the seat. It makes a huge difference.
So he
Exactly.
asked about for skin protection.
Exactly. You get a lot more skin protection that way. It's a lot more comfortable. If it's like an 8-hour flight to London, for instance, it makes a huge difference between sitting in one of their seats and sitting in a seat that you're used to sitting in. Yeah, you definitely want to be moving as much as possible. We all run into. We're still going to have the same problems with deep vein thrombosis, so we need to make sure you hydrate. So if you can, as far as bladder management is concerned, use an indwelling catheter for the trip if it's going to be a long trip, so you can maintain your hydration.
Bring your platypus back.
Yeah, bring whatever you need to do. And just because you need to stay hydrated and you need to move around, stretch, you know, move your legs around or have somebody move your legs around. If you're flying alone, the flight attendants, especially on at least British Airways, they're like the best people ever. They'll do almost anything. Well, I haven't asked for everything, so we'll see, but they are extremely helpful. They'll help you move your legs around. They'll rearrange things. They'll bring you bottles of water instead of glasses of water, for instance, and all that stuff. So, and it's definitely the case if you do have medical things that you are sending through, just put whatever you have on the top of your luggage, so that if they unzip it to double check, it's right on top and they see that it's there. Because if they see a bunch of clothes first, then they probably will balk at it and say, you know, you're really using it for your clothing.
So the question is, so you've gotten there, now what? How do you get transportation? What do you do for that?
The 2 things we've always done, usually we just rent a van to the tune of about $100 a day, maybe 90 if you rent it for a week. The trip we took to San Diego, we transported to the hotel and went to SeaWorld, and luckily it was about a half a mile from SeaWorld, so I just wheeled. And anything else we did, we just did public transportation. I'm real happy and comfortable with the public transportation system here in Seattle, so when I knew we were going to San Diego, I got on their website, looked where the lines were from point A to point B, and did it that way. So my experience is either rent a van or use public transportation. Beyond that, I can't say.
when I've traveled to San Diego, because I have family down there, I actually rent a car through Hertz or Alamo or one of those, and you call ahead, and they can put hand controls in pretty much any car. I've used a Chevy Malibu works really well, and Impala works really well. Sort of a mid full-size car seems to work pretty well as far as getting in and out for me. Matter of fact, when I was down in San Diego last time, I hopped into one of the new Camaros, and that'll work really well for me too. So that'll be my next rental. But for the price of a van rental, I can rent a Camaro. So, you know, might as well for me. But if you're doing something like that, make sure you bring, if you can transfer yourself, but you aren't really sure about the bed or the car rental or anything like that, make sure you bring a transfer board, because sometimes the gap between your chair and the actual seat in the car can be a little bit greater than it appears. So it just adds a little extra bump there. Europe, I've used mass transit. I've been, in Switzerland it was pretty good. The buses all had ramps, which were these plastic things that were folded up behind the driver, that when the doors opened, the driver would then get up, unfold them, put it down, and then have to push you up the ramp because it was about a 45-degree angle. But it worked. And they won't even do that for people with strollers. So I mean, they're a lot more helpful to somebody in a wheelchair than somebody carrying a lot of bags or somebody pushing a stroller. The trams, the newer trams, are generally kind of like our light rail here, where and this is true throughout most of Northern Europe, where there's a ramp that sort of kicks out, and it's at sidewalk level, and it comes out really well, and they're pretty fairly accessible. The trains that I've found, I've only done trains in the U.S., and the trains in the U.S. work really well. I would imagine in Europe they're probably a little more difficult, except for the newer ones. I'm sure the TGV or any of those high-speed trains are quite accessible.
When I went on a Caribbean cruise, I went to St. Thomas, and I was told it was a seminar at sea for me, and I was told through all the accommodations that there were no accessible transportation opportunities for myself. But I Googled, and I just looked around, and I just put in St. Thomas wheelchair accessible transportation, and I found it. And then I just booked with that gentleman, and we just made an excursion out of it. So when somebody tells you no, don't always go with their first instinct of no, because not only will you find that that possibility is available to you, but you're also educating somebody else, so the next person that comes along will have that opportunity as well. And I also found out, just in regards to Amtrak, when you go and you are going to be a part of a sleeper car, it is only for 2 people, really only 1 wheelchair, and then like a companion. And I found out that the dimensions are about 6 feet and 8 inches wide by 7 inches long. So it's not huge, and but it's on the first floor. They don't have any kind of lift that will take you up to where the dining car would be or anything like that. So all of your meals would be in your room, whether it's somebody bringing them to you or a caregiver or a friend or whoever's traveling with you.
So the question is there any kind of perks or specials or deals for with somebody with a disability? Who wants to?
You go ahead.
Okay. Amtrak, yes, they do have a discount. Greyhound, your companion that will be traveling with you, would be 50% off. And I'm sorry, I don't have the discount for Amtrak, but I know that there is one.
So the question is there any way possible that you can get into an airline bathroom? Airplane, actually on the plane.
Yes, there are different airplanes, depending on what kind of whatever the, gosh, I'm trying to think of gosh, not a 747, but depending on the type of the plane, thank you. Yes, they will have, some will have a wheelchair accessible restroom, and then what you will need to ask for is an aisle chair, so you can transfer over to the aisle chair and then have assistance to get into that wheelchair accessible restroom. It's not easy, but it's there.
So you would, on those, you would have to actually check to see what plane is flying on your flight to see whether that would even be possible.
Correct.
Have you ever done anything like that, Chris?
I know that on when I flew British Airways, the A380 and the 747 both have accessible restrooms. However, I haven't even tried to do it because it's the lifting into the chair and then out of the chair, and they don't have transfer teams on the plane, obviously, so the flight attendants have to do that, and it adds a lot of difficulty. But I know it can be done. If you don't have to go into the restroom for your flight, you're much better off. Just try to make yourself as comfortable as possible. Read, sleep, eat. That
Be
sort of thing.
merry.
Don't drink alcohol, or if you do drink alcohol, drink a limited amount of it because it's really not very good on an airplane.
Thank you.
Delicate question. Is it possible to change an incontinence pad sitting down?
Is it possible to change an incontinence pad sitting down? Anybody have
It's
any?
possible to do anything. I can't imagine that it would be easy. But one thing I would recommend, actually, first thing you do, because you're generally first on the plane, so give yourself a lot of time. No matter whether it's a domestic or international flight, ask for a pillow, ask for a blanket or two. You can give yourself a lot more privacy that way, and if you do need to change something, you have a lot more opportunity there. I keep my backpack, instead of having them put it above me, I actually just keep it behind my knees. When I'm traveling, I have a Foley-in, and I keep an overnight bag, and I just connect it when I get on the flight. It's in my backpack, so it's just a little tube that's kind of hanging out of my backpack, and it's just sitting behind my knees. I can unplug and put it back when I get off the plane, and that works really well for me. But yeah, keep everything you need right in front of you. Ask for blankets, and you'd be surprised how you can wiggle around and weasel in those little seats.
So one other question I had is just whether or not there's anything about different sites that you've gone to that have been difficult. So you said you went to SeaWorld. Was that pretty accessible? Was there things that you were not able to do?
Well, yeah, I think it was, we've done SeaWorld and Disney World. The wheelchair accessible rides pretty much aren't, because they're thinking manual chair, not 600-pound electric chair, power chair. I think when we went to Disneyland, the one ride I could get on was like Dumbo's little kiddie ride, which I'm with my kids, so it worked okay. But no, I mean, that was like 1 out of 10 rides that were supposed to be accessible. They're not. They're thinking smaller manual chairs. But other than that, yeah, you can roll around all over the place in Disneyland and SeaWorld, and generally get to where you need to be to see what's going on and see the shows. But yeah, the actual rides, no.
I actually did the roller coaster at New York, when I was in Vegas, and there I just asked a couple guys in the line to just pick me up, and they just picked me up and put me in the roller coaster. So the people that work at these places won't touch you, liability and whatnot, but you'd be amazed who's going to help you out somewhere in the line. And a couple guys just kind of there, pick you up, drop you in, and it works pretty well. Roller coasters are not the most comfortable thing. Those little bars holding you down only hold you down so much, and so you lift up and then your bony butt smacks onto these plastic seats. So it's not the most comfortable thing, but going upside down and spinning around it can be a lot of fun.
It was worth it.
It was well worth it, and they let me ride twice because it was such a pain to get me out.
I do
So
have
another perk.
Another part.
one thing that I wanted to add in regards to this is when Chris was talking about sitting on his Rojo seat, what I do is I sit on what's called a mini max, and it is a Rojo seat. I actually lean against one just for protection for my back, and I also then sit on one. So instead of sitting on the 4-inch one on the airplane, I sit on my mini max. And then when I went to Disney World, or when I'm doing if I go boating or anything like that, I will then sit on my 2-inch mini max, and then that's really, really helpful. So then when you're lifted up, your butt won't hit.
I might have to get one.
We're all learning.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris is saying that one of the ways that he's kind of anticipated travel is to actually mail stuff ahead of time to the hotel or the rental car place so that it's there waiting for him when he gets there. And yeah, so you don't have to worry about trying to negotiate with a different medical equipment company and have your insurance do it. So the bladder supplies for longer than you want to pack in your travel bag, if you send enough ahead, you can do it that way.
And it also reminds me that if you are going to be traveling for any length of time, also if you can get your prescriptions for whatever you take regularly, if you can get a copy of those prescriptions if you're just in case you accidentally knock over all your meds and they get flushed down the toilet, or you stay longer than you anticipate, because if you're in a country you really love and you can get around and you want to stay there for a little bit longer, you should. It's a great opportunity to meet new people, to expose yourself to new environments, expose people to you, different cultures, people with different abilities. So carry around your prescriptions with you if you can. And also not a bad idea to, if you're prone to UTIs or something like that, maybe carry a prescription for some sort of antibiotic that works for you if you are going to be traveling in a place where you recognize the symptoms. But that, you should obviously talk to your physician ahead to make sure that that's okay, but it's good to be prepared.
I was just also going to mention, when traveling, when flying, also have a list of all of your medications and the milligrams and everything that you take. So if and when the TSA pull you aside, you have proof. And what I've actually done is I've had my pharmacy print out all of the information with my doctor's telephone numbers and everything, just so they have proof by somebody that has a heading, letterhead with a name on it. So that's also helpful too.
So the question is, if you're traveling to Europe, what are the countries that may be more friendly? What are the ones to probably avoid? Do you have
Friendly, with respect to friendly, what's your intent on friendly?
Is it accessibility?
Heard rumors, for example, that the Paris metro is not particularly accessible.
Which is actually very true.
So Paris Metro is not really accessible.
And the London Tube in some spots is and isn't also. Most everything can be friendly. It's a little more, if you can travel in a manual chair, I definitely recommend you do so, because it will allow you a lot more movement into those places as well, because you will find people can help you down some stairs. They can roll you down, 12 flights of stairs if they need to, and get you in the doors and block for you and do a lot of things. And you don't need to speak the language. As far as general accessibility, I've found that the further north you are in Europe, the more accessible the general layout is than when you go further south. But as far as people just jumping out and helping you, the further south you are, the more people are going to help you. Like, just jump out and help you. And some of them aggressively so. So we might want to, once again, smile, slow down.
Okay, so the question is about traveling on Greyhound.
I have not traveled on Greyhound, but yes, they will assist you. If you are able to travel on your own, you have to be completely independent in regards to if you need to use the restroom or anything. They don't allow personnel to be hands-on with you, but in regards to getting up and down on the lift to get on the bus, they have equipment to do so. They just ask for 48 hours advance, and you would need to make that reservation over the phone with a reservationist, and then they would be able to take care of you.
So I just have one last question, and that is, where is your next travel plan? So Joe, what are you doing next? Where are you going?
We are planning on going back home to Kansas this summer to see the wheat harvest, which I haven't seen. I grew up on a farm in Kansas, which I haven't seen since I was injured. And my wife is seriously considering driving and taking 3 weeks to do it, taking our van and just doing a big road trip, which is going to be a whole new adventure for us. If we don't drive, then yeah, we'll probably fly again. But that's my next plans, yeah.
That sounds great. How about you, Chris?
Next plans are visit my niece and nephew down in SoCal. Not sure how long I'll stay down there, maybe forever, who knows.
You say
Until
that all the time.
I say that all the time, exactly. I've been saying that for 5 years now.
In the winter especially.
In the winter especially, yeah. And renting a Camaro.
And how about you, Karen?
Gosh, I don't have any travel plans, so I'm gonna say Tuscany because that's where I really want to go.
That sounds like a great plan. Well, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you all being here and taking the time to share your stories with us. So just want to thank you again, and if you wouldn't mind hanging out for a few minutes so people, if they have other questions, that'd be awesome.
Thanks, everyone.